So I've sewn the shoulder seams together and I've bias bound the edges to make it look neat. And now I put piping around the armhole. So I pipe the armhole around. I've cut the piping a bit short inside so it's not right underneath the arm from about here to here, maybe about an inch in on either side. So I'm popping in the bias binding inside the other one to make it look neat. And then I will carry on sewing around there. So that's your piped armhole. So it's machined round, and this is where I've left the piping about here to here. You don't have to do that, you can pipe it all the way around, but it takes the lump out of there and it won't irritate the performer's underarm as much, and it makes it easier. It can be flat there. So that's the reasoning behind that. I've trimmed it all. I've clipped all the underarm, and then I'm just going to come round and slip stitch everything down. Don't slip stitch just here just yet, because you'll want to pop your casing of your bone and you want the ends to go under there. So if you have some pita shim and you were doing it on the machine, I would put a single layer of pita shim, machine it just to the seam allowance either side, pop your bone in, and then you can finish off your bias binding. Or you can make your own casings and herringbone them in. So you need to make some casings for your boning now. So if you get some pita shim, fold it in half and machine down the side, either side. This is just machined on one side at the moment. Yeah, so you're making a little casing. If you haven't got any pita shim because of the lockdown, you can make some, just make some out of calico or fabric. And if you make a little casing you're with, and I've machined a bit of cord into it, so I've machined across the end, and then I can start. I can ease it over the cord and reverse it. And then I can cut the end off. The cord's pulled out, and then I can pop my bone in there. And I've got a casing. Yeah, and then you can put that onto your side seam and the lower half of your front seam. So I've made the casing out of calico. I popped my bone in, I pinned it in place, and now I'm going to herringbone stitch across. And then I can lay down the rest of my bias binding on both of these. So here I've herringbone the casing, I've whipped it down at the end, either end, and I've herringboned across. Some places I've caught through the casing to make sure it's secure. Not every single one, it makes it hard work. I just do every sort of odd one. And same on the front. So it's just below the bust and into the waist. So I finished slip stitching the underarm, and now I'm going to slip stitch all of the waist. So I've pre-tacked it in place, machined it, or you can back stitch with a single thread. Clipped all along, and turn up my bias in, and I'm going to slip stitch it all now. Yep. So this is it all finished. We've herringboned the placket down. I've laid down the bias binding. I've herringboned the boning in on the side and on the bust line, on the lower half of the bust line, under the bust, and finished off the armhole. We're leaving the neck for now until we decide on what type of bertha I'm going to use. So this is the other side of it. So it's piped around the edge, piped up the bust line around the arm, but the piping is just left out here so that it doesn't create bulk, because you've got the bulk of the seam allowance as well, and we've just mimicked. It's empty piping there, so it looks like it's there, but it's just empty. Saves on bulk and irritating the performer's underarm. And piped the side back curve seam. Plackets there. And here's the sleeve is finished. And now I can pop it into the armhole. I'll prick stitch through the piping. Prick stitch through the piping, stab stitch to on the sleeve just in here, so it'll sit inside nice and neat. Prick stitch, it will hold it in place, and then that way it's an independent piece. It can be pulled out and another one replacing it, so you could interchange sleeves. So here's my bertha that I've started making. I've used 3 layers of organza. I've bagged out the front edge. I've sewn together at the seam, at the shoulder seam, and bagged out the center back as well, because we're only doing half a bertha. This doesn't fit sand properly, so you're not seeing it to its full potential. So what I'm going to do next, what you need to do is make a template of the shape you want your bertha. This one's quite curved. You could do it to a point, come into a point on the center front. So if you make a base, you could use a net, you could use calico for a base, you could use your silk, and then mount more on. You could either pleat it. This I'm just going to bias bind the bottom edge. I'm going to pipe the neckline and the collar together and turn it in so it looks like a nice finished edge. So you have free rein, do whatever you like. You could pop some lace on it, make your own ribbon out of silk. There's lots of things you could do. You could put beads on it. Whatever takes your fancy, go for it. So I've made a bertha, 3 layers of organza. And I've just tacked it to the neckline. And I've used a pre-existing piece of fabric, so it's on a curve. You could bring it to a point. You can pleat it. So this is pleated up with bias strips, just built up on top of each other. You can do the pleated bertha also in one piece. So this is a bias piece of fabric, and I could just start pleating it up, just catching it underneath with a tacking stitch. And carry on pleating it up. So this is it completed nearly. I've piped the edge here, turned it in. I need to slip stitch it down. So this could be brought down into a point. It could be swagged from the centre. And if you want it to fit around the bust, if you've got a larger bust, you can dart it a little bit. So if you dart, bigger dart and then a smaller dart either side of the bust. So you can make your Bertha in 2 pieces, one front and back, 3 pieces, one on the front, 2 on either side of the back. They can be attached like I've done it, or they could be detachable. So you could interchange the Berthas. You can make a few different ones and pop them on to change the look of the dress. Same with the sleeves, you can pop them in and out on this. The way that we finished the sleeve in a complete unit, and it can just be tacked through the ditch of the piping into the armhole. So this is the front of your half Victorian bodice, and here's the back.